Washington Watch News Desk. I'm Casey Harper bringing you today's big stories. In the Middle East, plumes of smoke could be seen over the Gaza Strip on Thursday from the Israeli side of the border as Israeli tanks advance further into Gaza City. Internet and phone lines were cut off across the Strip, residents said, a sign that ground operations were likely to escalate imminently. The Israeli military has been dropping leaflets urging residents to flee Gaza City towards a designated humanitarian zone, but many have refused. Israel says it wants to smash the Palestinian militant group Hamas in its strongholds and free the last hostages still being held in Gaza, but it faces increasing international pressure to end the war. Now, across the world, President Donald Trump departed from the UK today after a meeting with leaders there to discuss a range of issues, from trade deals to the war in Israel. Notably, at a press conference, President Trump and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer publicly voiced their disagreement about a two-state solution in Israel.
I want an end. I want the hostages released. A lot of bad things. You know, Hamas said that they're going to put the hostages up as bait. They're going to put the hostages in front of any attack. And that's pretty brutal. We haven't heard that one in a long time. So we have to remember that. So I have a disagreement with the Prime Minister on that score. Okay. One of our few disagreements, actually.
We absolutely agree on the need for peace and a roadmap because the situation in Gaza is intolerable. The question of recognition needs to be seen, and so it's part of that overall package which hopefully takes us from the appalling situation we're in now to the outcome of a safe and secure Israel, which we do not have, and a viable Palestinian state.
Now, Israel has been angered by Britain's plans to join several other Western countries, including France and Canada, in recognizing a Palestinian state at the UN General Assembly later this month. Now, that will happen, according to them, unless Israel meets conditions which include a ceasefire in Gaza. Now, in another newsworthy moment, Trump said the U.S. would try to reclaim Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan, which was taken over by the Taliban after President Joe Biden's withdrawal in 2021.
We're going to leave Afghanistan, but we're going to leave it with strength and dignity. And we're going to keep Bagram, the big air base, that one of the biggest air bases in the world. We gave it to them for nothing. We're trying to get it back, by the way. Okay, that could be a little breaking news. We're trying to get it back because they need things from us. We want that base back. But one of the reasons we want the base is, as you know, it's an hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapon.
Starmer also faced tough questions about the UK crackdown on free speech. The UK arrests about 12,000 people a year for social media posts they deem inappropriate. Now, the president's return to the U.S. comes as world leaders prepare to gather in New York next week for a UN General Assembly that is expected to be dominated by conflict over the war in Gaza, the war in Ukraine, rising Western recognition of Palestinian statehood, and the conflict over nuclear tensions with Iran. Trump is expected to speak at the UN on Tuesday. Now, in February, the president described the UN as having, quote, great potential, but says it has to get its act together. The president has maintained his wariness of the UN's multilateralism that was a hallmark of his first term from 2017 to 2021. He's also accused the UN of failing to help him try to broker peace in various conflicts. Now, for our last story, Democrats and Republicans are at a standoff as we draw nearer to the government shutdown deadline. All eyes are on the Senate Democrats, who have demanded an increase in Obamacare subsidies and may be willing to shut down the government to get them.
So I'm hoping that, notwithstanding what Senator Schumer is saying, that there are Democrats out there who think it's a really bad idea, like they did last year, to shut down the government. And if, in fact, that's the case, hopefully they will deliver the votes that are necessary for us to keep the government open.
The government will shut down at the end of this month if no funding is passed. And those are today's stories. I'm Casey Harper. You can dive deeper with the Washington Stand at washingtonstand.com. Up next is Washington Watch with Tony Perkins, and we're back tomorrow with more stories that matter.
From the heart of our nation's capital in Washington, D.C., bringing compelling interviews, insightful analysis, taking you beyond the headlines and sound bites into conversations with our nation's leaders and newsmakers, all from a biblical worldview. Washington Watch with Tony Perkins starts now.
Seems like Republicans have already outright rejected the idea of your plan. Are you willing to shut the government down?
Ask the Republicans if they're willing to shut the government down. That's where they're headed.
That was Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer indicating that our country may be headed toward a government shutdown if he has his way. Welcome to this September 18th edition of Washington Watch. I'm your host, Tony Perkins. Thanks so much for tuning in. Well, coming up, Israeli tanks push deeper into Gaza City with the goal of bringing the war that Hamas started on October 7, 2023, to a close. However, the intensifying ground campaign in Hamas's urban stronghold is intensifying international condemnation. I'll dive deeper into the issue with Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma later in the program. And Congress is gearing up to pass a CR in an effort to prevent that government shutdown. I'll be joined by Congressman Mark Ayers of North Carolina to discuss the latest on the CR. President Donald Trump said on Wednesday he wants to designate the Antifa movement as a terrorist organization. In his post on Truth Social, he added, quote, "I will also be strongly recommending that those funding Antifa be thoroughly investigated in accordance with the highest legal standards and practices." Trump's signal of new action against left-wing groups comes after the assassination of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk last week. What role did these left-wing groups play in creating an atmosphere of hostility towards conservatives that has repeatedly led to violence? Joining me now to discuss this, Washington Stand reporter Casey Harper, who has been following this story. Casey, what more can you tell us about President Trump's statement that he wants to designate Antifa a terrorist organization?
Well, thanks, Tony. As you said, President Trump made that announcement on Truth Social, saying, quote, "I'll be strongly recommending that those funding it are hit with the highest legal standards and practices." A pretty strong statement. Well, President Trump's signal of new action against left-wing groups, it comes, as you said, after the assassination of Christian conservative activist Charlie Kirk on September 10th. President Trump and senior officials in his administration have repeatedly blamed left-wing groups for creating an atmosphere of hostility toward conservatives before Kirk's murder. This also comes after the recent revelations that Biden's Department of Justice targeted 92 conservative organizations in an investigation they labeled Arctic Frost. And Tony, it is true that not just conservatives, but also Christians are facing threats, violence, and even persecution from left-wing individuals and organizations. For example, at a Dearborn City Council meeting just last week, Mayor Abdullah Hammoud told resident Ted Barham, who's a Christian minister actually, that he was, quote, "not welcome in the city," after that minister objected to street signs honoring Arab American news publisher Osama Siblani. The minister criticized Siblani for past comments he believes supported Hezbollah and Hamas. Now, although the signs were installed by Wayne County and not the city, the mayor escalated the exchange during the public meeting, Tony.
Thanks, Casey. We'll actually dive a little bit deeper into this and have a discussion with Dr. Andrew Bostom. Casey, what other stories are you tracking?
Well, a lot going on this week, Tony. Congress is working to pass a CR to extend funding for the government past September 30th. With that looming government shutdown on the horizon, Republicans are trying to work with Democrats, but so far there's not much progress on that front. Democrats seem like they want a government shutdown and are not willing to cooperate. Now, another headline from today is President Trump's visit in the UK. During a joint press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, President Trump said that tariffs were crucial to boosting current investment levels in America and emphasized the importance of, quote, "sane regulation" in the U.S. economy. His visit as he departs today included high-profile meetings and ceremonies, culminating in the announcement of a $205 billion U.S. investment package into Britain. During the press conference, President Trump also said that Russian President Vladimir Putin had let him down. He made the comment after a question from a reporter on the efforts to end the war in Ukraine.
The one that I thought would be easiest would be because of my relationship with President Putin, but he's let me down. He's really let me down. It was going to be Russia and Ukraine, but we'll see how that turns out. But that turned out to be, I thought it might be among the easiest of the group. But we had settled just about every conflict, and as you know, we're working very hard on Israel and Gaza. All that's happening over there, complex, but it's going to get done.
Now, meanwhile, in the Middle East, Israeli tanks advanced further into Gaza City today, with smoke rising and communications cut off, which is a show of that further escalation in ground operations as Israeli forces targeted key neighborhoods and moved towards those densely populated areas. Now, Israel has urged civilians to flee to a southern humanitarian zone amid the increasingly dire conditions there. Its offensive against Hamas, though, and efforts to free hostages have drawn some international condemnation, Tony.
Certainly has. Thank you, Casey. Appreciate the report today. Well, joining me now to discuss this and more is U.S. Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. He serves on 4 Senate committees, including the Finance Committee and the Select Committee on Intelligence. Senator Lankford, thanks so much for joining us today. Always great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you as well, Tony. Thanks for all the work you do.
Well, I appreciate it. Let's start with something that you and I share in common. We've spent a lot of time in Israel, concerned about the Middle East, understand the role of Israel, not just in geopolitics, but as believers, as Christians. It occupies a very important part. What can you tell us the latest? I know you also are part of you chair the Abraham Accords. Are we making progress?
We are making some progress, but it's painfully difficult. And we are also at the 5-year mark for the Abraham Accords, and we think about how significant that has been in the region. The Abraham Accords were a moment to be able to make friends when we needed to be able to make friends, and now we're in a situation where those relationships continue to hold. The UAE, Bahrain, Morocco continue to be able to maintain communication with Israel even during this ongoing war. But right now, Israel, as you've mentioned, and your reporter also mentioned, Israel is on an offensive actually in Gaza City to be able to find, locate, and actually redeem their hostages that are actually there. Israel has said over and over and over again, this war would be over if Hamas would give up its hostages. Hamas knows its very existence is based on killing people and taking hostages, and so they refuse to be able to release even the bodies of individuals that were killed in the terrorist attack, much less those that are still alive. And I can't imagine what they've experienced over the last 2 years of being a hostage.
All right, it's I know, as you have, I've talked to some of the hostages that have been released, and just harrowing experiences. This latest push into Gaza City, my sense is in conversations with those in Israel and also through observation, understanding how difficult urban combat is, but this surge to me appears to come as Israel understands the international community is closing in on them. I mean, we've got the European Commission suggesting that tariff sanctions be placed on Israel. We have the United Nations General Assembly later this month, and we have some of our own allies in Europe wanting to saying they're going to call for a Palestinian state.
Yeah, we got the president saying with Keir Starmer today, even in the UK, is saying that they're going to call for a Palestinian state unilaterally. France has done the same, saying they're going to call for a Palestinian state unilaterally. That doesn't solve the problem. Plus the fact, even if you declared a Palestinian state, who's the head? Where's the leadership? What would that even look like? Who can Israel even negotiate with? Because there's such chaos in Judea and Samaria, and then clearly in Gaza and what's happening there. So there's no way to be able to recognize something that doesn't even have an organization system to it.
Senator, you and I have been together in Judea and Samaria. In fact, we were part of the first official groups to go into that region. It is much larger, about 24 times larger than what we have in Gaza. And Gaza, by de facto, was a two-state solution. I mean, this would be a disaster for Israel and their national security.
Right. And again, you're back to the most basic thing of leadership there. The Palestinian people don't trust the Palestinian Authority. You have multiple different political parties there. You have no organization. They've not had elections in a long time. And now you have a group of sheikhs in Hebron that are saying, hey, we don't want to be a part of the Palestinian area at all. We want to form our own emirate in this area. And several of the sheikhs coming on board as well and saying, hey, we want to look at a totally different solution, not a two-state solution, but an agreement between Palestinian people and Israelis to be able to how we can actually cooperate together.
That's not getting a lot of media attention because that is a major development. We've not seen that before, where you have Arabs, those living under the jurisdiction of the Palestinian Authority, say, we don't want this corrupt government.
Right.
We want to operate the way this area did prior to about 100 years ago when they began to carve up and create this nation state. They were tribal, and they want to live under the families.
One of the most successful nations in that entire region is the United Arab Emirates, and it's a group of families that have organized together. They form their own government and their own coalitions, but each is an emirate, a group of families there with leadership on that. That's a very Middle Eastern model, and the two-state solution is very often the West trying to impose the way we do government, not the way that's actually done in the Middle East. There are Middle Eastern families there in the Palestinian area saying, no, we want to do Emirates. We want to break away from the PA.
All right. I mean, this, as you said, a pretty recent development after the fall of the Ottoman Empire and the West imposing and just basically going in and drawing lines and dividing it up. All right. Senator, before we run out of time, we just have about 3 minutes left. I want to shift to domestic issues, government funding. Here we are again. Yep. Democrats trying to, I think they're taking a wager. I think they're saying if the Republicans don't blink, we're going to shut down the government.
Yeah, they are. Right now, the Democrats are trying to be able to prove to their far-left progressive base that we're fighting against Trump on it. But when you run into a government shutdown, it's always a charge of the light brigade. Every time Republicans have done it, Democrats have done it. But at the end, it spends more money. It wastes taxpayer dollars to be able to do it. It's all the drama. We look terrible on the world stage. Government shutdowns don't help us. They actually hurt us long-term. This particular one, Republicans have said, okay, let's just keep the government open for the next 7 weeks. Exactly the same funding as we have now so we can continue negotiations to be able to finish things out in the next 7 weeks. And Democrats have said, no, we want an extra $300 billion to do an extension of COVID-era insurance pieces that they had done during the COVID time period when President Biden was in place. They want an additional $300 billion to keep the government open 7 weeks. Now, just think about that and all the debt and deficit that we have for the next 7 weeks. They want $300 billion to be able to add to it to be able to increase COVID area healthcare funds. So we've said, hey, let's talk about things, but we're not going to do $300 billion in this process for 7 weeks.
This is what the White House has called for and what the House is poised to passion. I was speaking with the majority leader, Steve Scalise, earlier this morning. A clean CR. It just continues what we had in place. Democrats voted for that, did they not?
They did. During the Biden administration, we had 13 different continuing resolutions. Almost every single Democrat voted for every single one of them to say, hey, let's just keep the negotiations going until we can actually get the appropriations work done. This is common practice. If we run out of time to say, just don't shut it down, keep it going, let's keep negotiating. We're getting close. We already have wide agreement on 3 of the 12 appropriation bills. We have 9 to go. We can get those done in the next 7 weeks on it. That's the right way to be able to go, not to say, I'm going to shut the government down if you don't give me $300 billion and more COVID.
Your sense, the House is going to pass it. They're going to leave town. That creates a lot of pressure for the Senate to adopt what the House has.
It does, actually, except that the last time that this happened, Chuck Schumer and a group of Democrats in the Senate voted for that continuing resolution, and their progressive base just pounded away on them for doing that. So I think Chuck Schumer is going to try to prove that he is fighting against Trump and is going to shut the government down and is going to say, no, I won't do a clean CR just to be able to keep it going. I want to be able to add something to it, and this time it's his new health care piece that he wants to be able to add into it. And so we'll see how that fight goes. Ultimately, though, it's better for us to keep the negotiation going and not have a shutdown.
Yeah. Senator James Lankford, always great to see you, my friend. Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Good to see you again. Keep praying for the nation.
Absolutely. Folks, we need to be praying. A lot to pray for. All right, coming up next, we're going to be joined by Congressman Mark Harris. Don't go away.
3 years ago, the Supreme Court issued its historic Dobbs decision, a ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade, which for nearly 50 years imposed abortion on demand, silencing voters and bypassing the democratic process across the country. The Dobbs decision was a huge step forward against abortion, but it didn't outright ban it. It returned the power to the people. Now, 29 states have laws on the books protecting life. However, there's a catch. Abortion numbers since Dobbs have actually gone up, with an increase of 12% since 2020, climbing from 930,000 to over 1 million in each of the most recent years. So how can this be? The answer is simple: the abortion drug. Today, over 60% of U.S. abortions involve abortion drugs, many of these without medical oversight. In 2021, the Biden administration quietly removed bare minimum long-standing safety protocols for the abortion drug that have existed for 20 years to protect women from life-threatening risks and ensuring informed consent. The Biden DOJ then declared that they would not enforce the Comstock Act, which prevents the mailing of anything that causes an abortion. This is not only illegal, but also dangerous. A study shows nearly 11% of women who take the abortion drug end up in the emergency room with serious complications. Unless the Trump administration reverses these reckless Biden-era policies, pro-life laws will remain largely symbolic. Without a full review and repeal of mifepristone, unborn lives will remain in grave danger and pregnant mothers will remain at risk. Let's stand for life and end this mail-order abortion drug pipeline. Sign the petition urging the Trump administration to take action at frc.org/stopchemicalabortion.
In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we have seen His glory. Family Research Council invites you to join our Stand on the Word Bible reading plan as we reflect upon the life of Jesus, the Word who dwelt among us. Come with us and discover the glory of the Word. Read the Gospels and witness the life-changing story of Jesus, His life, death, and resurrection. Come read how Jesus transformed the lives of common people and how those same people transformed the known world through the power of the Holy Spirit. Come with us for 10 to 15 minutes a day and read the entire New Testament before the new year. Find our Bible reading plan and daily devotionals from Tony Perkins at frc.org/Bible. Join us and stand on the Word.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you'd like to find out more about Washington Watch and the Family Research Council, go to TonyPerkins.com. Better yet, download the Stand Firm app. Go to the App Store and get the Stand Firm app. That way you can have access to Washington Watch no matter where you go. Also, you can have access to our news and commentary from a biblical perspective, the Washington Stand, and my daily devotional, Stand on the Word. All of that is found on the Stand Firm app. Yesterday, the House moved one step closer to keeping the federal government funded past the looming September 30th deadline. Now, what they did is they approved in the House a rule to advance the House continuing resolution. Now, it was a party line vote, 216 to 210. House Speaker Mike Johnson is reportedly still eyeing a Friday morning floor vote on the stopgap funding measure. They're still trying to get a few more votes together. Congress will be out next week, and so this will pass the House, and as we were just talking about with Senator Langford, it will go over to the Senate. What will they do with it? Well, we'll see. You heard what he had to say. All right, joining me now to discuss what's happening in the House, Congressman Mark Harris. He serves on 3 House committees, including the Judiciary Committee and the Education Committee. He represents the 8th Congressional District of North Carolina, right outside of Charlotte. Congressman Harris, welcome back to Washington Watch. Always great to see you.
Tony, it's always great to be with you.
All right, so the House getting closer, inching closer. I understand there's a handful of votes yet to be wrangled to pass the CR. Talk a little bit about the internal conversations among Republicans. What are the concerns about passing a clean CR?
Well, of course, I think the main concern that many have about any kind of CR is all of us have run on wanting to get back to regular order. We want to see the appropriation bills get passed. Obviously, this was a bit of a unique situation where a lot of time was eaten up so far this year in getting the reconciliation bill done and getting it through. So we find ourselves facing this deadline of September 30th that's upon us. We've only got just a handful handful of appropriation bills through. And so the reality is there's going to have to be a CR. Now, I'm a proponent, quite frankly, and have been all along, of a year-long CR if we're going to do one, more long-term, simply because that is going to at least hold spending at a level place and avoid any kind of increase in spending. But it seems like the better play at this particular point is going to be a short-term CR that's going to get us to November 21st, and it'll be clean, and that's going to give us more time to get more accomplished with many of these appropriation bills that are out there. The Democrats to give some top numbers to our appropriators, but we're making progress, and I'm hopeful that we're going to get that come Friday.
Well, I agree with you. I think a longer-term CR is probably better because every time you have a vote, there has to be negotiations, and when there's negotiations, things have to be given up. And while it might not necessarily be in the CR itself, as it's described as a clean CR, there are side deals that have to be made to get votes. So that is problematic. And to your point, there's been all this discussion about getting back to regular order, meaning passing the 12 appropriations bills, having the discussions, having the committee hearings on those. And I know the House is proceeding, but at the end of the day, it doesn't get all the way through the process. It's been almost 20 years since that has happened. What kind of commitment is the House leadership making to ensure that you get back to that regular order?
Well, again, I think the Speaker's made it very clear that that's his goal and would like to see us get there. Again, we do have to deal with the Democrats and making sure we have an idea of the top numbers with appropriations that they're going to deal with when it gets to the Senate. Obviously, that's the big challenge the House has. If the Republicans all stick together, we can pass something through the House, but then it gets over the Senate, and it's going to be Chuck Schumer's problem. And they've got it's got to be 7 Democrats that avoid the shutdown, really, by stepping up and passing it.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens here. I want to switch gears a little bit because you serve on the House Judiciary Committee, which yesterday heard testimony from FBI Director Kash Patel. Now, during that hearing, as I was watching it, you brought up the Biden administration's weaponization of federal agencies, targeting not criminals, not violent crime, but Christians in churches.
Absolutely. We brought up the question to them up front that was it wise to spend resources on spying on the Catholic Church? And I specifically use that word spying because what they've been doing is absolutely atrocious. And we genuinely felt like we needed to step in and ask the FBI director. And I even carried it one step further and pointed out, having been a pastor for 36 years, was it possible that I was on Ray's FBI watch list? And the director, Kash Patel, assured me that while he couldn't speak to that at the moment, that he would assure me that I would not be on his watch list or the watch list of the FBI under his leadership.
Well, actually, I'd like them. I'd like to be on my watch list. I want them to watch the program. I want to hear the truth of what's going on. Now, I understand his response to you is that he went a little further. He's said that the FBI would be, quote, zealously protecting our First Amendment rights, end quote. And that's for all Americans. I mean, I think you and I agree that every American has a right to speak, and their speech should be protected and should be targeted because we disagree with it.
Oh, you're exactly right. And, you know, this is a very, very serious issue, a touchy issue that I think all of us have got to be aware of. We had a hearing just a few weeks ago that we brought in Nigel Farage there from Great Britain, where we've all watched this thing just get crazy with censorship and the hate speech. And anytime the government uses that and puts something in, it seems like Christians are the ones that get the black eye. And again, you found where people are being arrested for praying silent prayer, even outside of abortion clinics. And so we've got to be very wise in how we approach it.
All right. Just a minute left, Congressman Harris. Any other major takeaways from yesterday's hearing?
Well, it was obvious to me that Kash Patel and his leadership there at the FBI is making an incredible difference. I mean, you're seeing the crime rates come down. You're seeing the amount of fentanyl that's been stopped at the border and all of those things. The work that's being done has been phenomenal. The Democrats, they honestly don't have anything to do but just to attack him personally. And one thing I was very impressed with Director Patel, he made it very clear on a number of occasions, you can hate me, you can attack me personally, but don't come after the good men and women of the FBI who are simply doing their jobs to protect this country. And I think President Trump and Director Patel are setting a whole new standard for all of us.
All right, Congressman Mark Harris, always great to see you, my friend. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
All right, folks, stick around. There's more Washington Watch straight ahead.
Download the new Stand Firm app for Apple and Android phones today. You can join a wonderful community of fellow believers. We've created a special place for you to access news from a biblical perspective, read and listen to daily devotionals, pray for current events, and more. Share the Stand Firm app with your friends, family, and church members. And of course, stand firm wherever you go.
At Family Research Council, defending the family isn't just a mission, it's our daily calling. Every team member at FRC uses their God-given talents to stand for biblical truth, protect life, and uphold religious freedom.
Here at Family Research Council, we face many threats to the family, threats that have been with us for some time. Abortion, the gender ideology threat, the attacks on marriage, the attacks on parental authority, and the attacks on religious freedom. We have to promote, support, strengthen, and incentivize family growth so families take their place in society in a place of honor.
I'm defending the family by working in the Center for Biblical Worldview to provide cutting-edge research and resources for pastors, ministry leaders, and Christian parents.
Through my work at the Washington Stand, I passionately defend what God has defined for marriage and family. I don't see the Washington Stand as just a place to talk about cultural events. It's a place to share biblical truth. It's a perfect outlet to advance and defend what God has defined as good, true, and beautiful.
Because of you, we're able to frame things in such a way that help Christians stand for truth on the things that matter most, like life, faith, family, and freedom.
Thank you for standing with us.
Thank you for your support. It is so critical to the work that we at Family Research Council are doing day to day as we support and strengthen the family. So thank you.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for joining us. All right, the city of Dearborn, Michigan has been getting some new unwanted attention the past few days after a video clip went viral of its Muslim mayor telling a Christian resident, who apparently is a pastor as well, that he is not welcome in the city. The remark was made following the resident's objection to renaming of a street in the heart of Dearborn after a newspaper publisher who has made pro-Hamas and pro-Hezbollah statements. Is this the type of message we should be hearing in America? Should this concern us? Joining me now to discuss this, Dr. Andrew Bostom, author of Sharia versus Freedom, The Legacy of Islamic Totalitarianism. Dr. Bostom, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Good to be with you, Tony.
All right, for those in our audience who are not aware, can you give us a little background on what's been unfolding in the city of Dearborn and what makes this unique?
Well, Dearborn is one of, I believe, a couple of cities now in, I think Hamtramck is the other, that has a Muslim mayor. It has a very large, now it's a majority Muslim community. And what you're seeing play out are what a lot of us have feared, is that in a predominantly Muslim enclave, city, town, etc., you will see application of Islamic law, and you know, this isn't you know, a clear-cut case of, for example, blasphemy, criticizing Islam's prophet Muhammad, but what this pastor did is go against the mores of the community, where this is, in their eyes, this is a respected Muslim, and how dare a non-Muslim criticize the decision to name a street after him? And obviously, I don't think there's anything legally legally that can be done to the pastor, but there may be all kinds of extra legal pressures put upon him. And the point is, Tony, that this is not considered negative from an Islamic perspective. This is the way Christians are supposed to behave in a Muslim community. They are supposed to bend to the will of the Muslim majority and not do anything that offends the sensibilities of Muslims.
But is that the American way, that we have to surrender our First Amendment freedoms because we're living in an enclave of Muslims?
Of course not. And the problem is that we don't have the political strength, the religious strength, the social strength to just say this is intolerable, and there should be higher officials in the state of Michigan that chastise this mayor and even threaten him if they have to. And federally things should be done to threaten funding to Dearborn.
He said this from the city council in his role as the mayor. So it wasn't like he posted this somewhere on social media. Exactly. He said it from his official post and capacity. Now, let me set something, because there are going to be people who say, well, you believe in religious freedom. What if a Christian was a mayor? Well, okay. But let me there's a difference between Islam and Christianity. Christianity allows freedom. Christianity actually allows this Muslim mayor to be a mayor in America. Let me ask you this. Is there a Christian mayor somewhere in a Muslim country telling a Muslim resident that they have to leave the city?
Of course not. And it's far worse than that. There's not a single Muslim country or region where Christians are free and safe. And in fact, what we're seeing right now in real time is the tragedy of what's happening in sub-Saharan Africa, where countries such as Nigeria, Congo, Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Niger, the Central African Republic have massacred or forcibly displaced millions of African Christians, jihadists allowed to roam free in these countries within the past 10 years. And there's about 34.5 million people that have been displaced across sub-Saharan Africa. Essentially half of them, about a little over 16 million, are Christians. There Christians in many Muslim countries can be detained without trial, arrested, sentenced, and imprisoned. They're incarcerated for their faith in Bangladesh and Iran. They're being driven underground in places like Yemen and Algeria, and even a society that gets a lot of attention, the vestigial remnant Christian community living under the rule of Palestinian jihad terror groups is almost extinct. And the surviving families have moved abroad or are trying to leave.
But all of those things that you just talked about, the harassment, the arrest, the persecution of Christians in Muslim countries, that doesn't happen here in the United States of America.
Of course not. Not to Muslims. Muslims, certainly it's in vogue, have a protected status in this country. We monitor so-called Islamophobic hate crimes, and there's all kinds of public opprobrium cast upon anyone who says something that's deemed negative about Muslims. It's the opposite.
That's the difference between Islam and Christianity. We welcome people into our home. We just don't want them kicking us out of our own home.
Right, but I think, Tony, ultimately, there's nothing that this mayor did from his perspective, from the mindset of a leader of really what's a Muslim community now. He did nothing wrong. He's protecting the mores of this Muslim community, and the problem is us. The problem is the non-Muslim political and religious leaders that are afraid to call out these behaviors and just label them as unacceptable.
It's a matter of courage and intestinal fortitude for us to stand up and to defend the Constitution and the Judeo-Christian ethic and foundation of that Constitution. I think we have to be willing to say those things.
Absolutely. Otherwise, our hard-won freedoms will dissolve.
Yeah.
And we will basically be functioning under, if not the letter of the Sharia, the spirit of the Sharia.
Dr. Boston, we got to leave it there. Always great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Tony. Take care.
All right, folks, stick with us. More to come after this.
Family Research Council is committed to advancing faith, family, and freedom from the East Coast to the West. So FRC is going to Southern California for this year's Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, October 17th and 18th at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. Join us for this powerful gathering of Christians desiring cultural renewal and spiritual revival. The Pray, Vote, Stand Summit brings together Christian leaders, issue experts, and government officials for a time of prayer, inspiration, and action. Together, we will seek God's guidance for our nation and engage in meaningful discussions on the intersection of faith, government, and culture. If the spiritual foundations and the cultural walls of our nation are to be rebuilt, we all have a role to play. May we each find our place on the wall as we build for biblical truth. Register now at prayvotestand.org. That's prayvotestand.org.
Jennifer, it's so exciting to be here with you today talking about our new book, Embracing God's Design. Who is actually going to benefit from reading this book in your view?
There's so many different audiences that can benefit. The first one are counselors themselves, right? Because we have some material in there where we really address the gender dysphoria diagnosis and what is wrong with it. We have information for people who are wanting to go back to embracing God's design for their life.
This is really magical to have the therapist and the individual who suffered come together and write about why this is happening and why we're seeing this.
And we brought all of that experience to the table. We want to see people walking in the fullness of who God has called them to be and not a false identity.
Order today at embracethedesign.com.
How should Christians think about the thorny issues shaping our culture? How should Christians address deceitful ideas like transgenderism, critical theory, or assisted suicide? How can Christians navigate raising children in a broken culture, the war on gender roles, or rebuilding our once great nation? Outstanding is a podcast from the Washington Stand dedicated to these critical conversations. Outstanding seeks to tear down what our corrupt culture lifts up, with an aim to take every thought and every idea captive to the obedience of Christ. Whether policies or partisan politics, whether conflict in America or conflict abroad, join us and our guests as we examine the headlines through the lens of Scripture and explore how Christians can faithfully exalt Christ in all of life. Follow Outstanding on your favorite podcast app and look for new episodes each week.
Welcome back to Washington Watch. Thanks for tuning in on this Thursday. All right, I want to invite you to join like-minded believers for the Pray, Vote, Stand Summit, October 17th and 18th at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills in Southern California. Now, this is going to be a powerful event. It's going to bring together Christian leaders, issue experts, and government officials to pray, to talk about voting. How do we impact this culture? How do we stand and defend? You know, we're at a point where we got to be very clear that the gates of hell will not prevail against the truth. Everything is coming against it, but we're going to stand firm. So I invite you to be a part of this year's powerful gathering at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. That's my battle buddy, Pastor Jack Hibbs. To find out more, go to prayvotestand.org. That's prayvotestand.org. All right, today's word comes from 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. Paul reminds us that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night, sudden and unexpected to a world asleep. But believers are sons of light and sons of the day, so we need not be caught off guard. Our call is to alertness, to sobriety, grounded in the gospel. Here's Paul's checklist for people of the day. For us as believers, wake up, refuse spiritual drowsiness, shake off apathy, and pay attention to what God is doing around you. Sober up, clear your mind and heart of the intoxicants of fear, outrage, and distraction. Let Scripture steady you. Look up. Watch with expectancy for Christ's return and read the times through the lenses of His promises, not the headlines of the paper. Armor up, put on the breastplate of faith and love and the helmet of hope of salvation. Faith anchors, love compels, and hope protects your mind. We may not know the timetable, but we do know our posture. awake, steady, hopeful, and ready. Live today as children of the light, bright with faith, warm with love, and guarded by hope until he comes. To find out more about our journey through the Bible, text Bible to 67742. That's Bible to 67742. All right, as we often do on Thursdays, we want to take a look back at some of the big news items of the week with our panel of pundits from the Washington Stand. Joining me now for that panel is Washington Stand Editor-in-Chief Jared Bridges and Managing Editor for Broadcast Casey Harper. Guys, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thanks, Tony.
I should say welcome back. You were here earlier. All right, let's start where I just left off in the last segment, Dr. Boston, talking about this news coming out of Dearborn, Michigan, where a Muslim mayor telling a Christian resident, happens to be a pastor, who objected to the renaming of a street in the name of a local newspaper publisher who had been pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah, and he told him, "You're not welcome here. Get out of the city." Jared.
Yeah, I don't think our founders, when they were writing freedom into our Constitution, meant that freedom meant you could take freedom out, away from people. And I think this is kind of what we're seeing here. Well,
you know, there's a term in the Constitution and our founding documents, ordered liberty.
Yeah.
And the mindset was that under Scripture, and I know people are going to push back on this, but John Adams, second President of the United States, says, our law is made for a moral and religious people, is wholly inadequate for the government of any other. And I would bet my life on this, Casey, that he was not referring to the Quran.
No.
He was referring to the Bible.
Yeah, the idea of mass Islamic immigration would have been unthinkable to the founders. I think it almost goes without saying. But I think that we've seen a lot of things, a lot of pushback on free speech lately, and this is part of it. You know, he can't even speak up at his own city council hearing without a government official who has a lot of power over him telling him he can't be there and he should be quiet. I think Islamization of a Christian society ultimately leads to free speech crackdowns because they just have a different set of values and what's offensive than the indwelling population. And when you don't have any unity over a common faith, it's inevitable that people are always going to be offended. There's going to have to be the law's going to have to come in, but it's never going to. The laws can't regulate it.
But see, that's also a part of the problem we have as a broader culture today, finding that unity when we've lost that common religious ethic. I mean, going back to the turbulent times of the 60s, which I've made some references to over the last week because of the parallels of the assassinations and the upheaval. But there was, at the end of the day, there was still a common thread of faith, Christian faith, that we saw draw the nation back together with the Jesus movement in the 70s and into the 80s. That's what gives me the greatest concern right now, Jared. But there's also, with this administration, not a hope of solution, but opening the door to the solution if Christians in the church will be aggressive in sharing their faith.
Right, and that's what Christians are called to do. If they love their neighbor, they're to share their faith with their neighbor. They're not to show their neighbor the door if their neighbor's legally allowed to be there.
Right.
I mean, we're to. It's diametrically different than what this Islamic approach in Dearborn is to, submit or leave, or right now it's leave. But for Christians, we see our neighbor doesn't agree with us. The Bible has a lot to say about how to live with your neighbor.
Right. Well, that's why I made that point with Dr. Boston. That's why in America you have a Muslim mayor and a Muslim community. Not that I endorse it, but because of the freedom that's allowed under the Christian ethic, you don't see that in a Muslim majority country. It doesn't happen. But I want to move on to the next topic, unless you had something, Casey.
No, I was just going to say that they have not just different theology than Christians, they have different values. And that's what Christians get wrong. They think, well, they just are like a different kind of faith with different names. This totally different value, different culture, different tradition.
And again,
it's all different.
I know that this gets pushback from people, but you look at the record, and we're going into the 250th anniversary of the United States. This nation was founded upon biblical principles. Biblical principles, Judeo-Christian, as they're often described. So this is an example of how ingrained free speech is in this country. Attorney General Pam Bondi has gotten some real pushback this week from conservatives, from those on the right, for her comments about cracking down on hate speech. I think we have a clip. Let's play that clip of Pam Bondi on that podcast.
We will absolutely target you, go after you if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle. We're seeing people online who are posting hate speech. They should be shut down. They should be stopped from doing this, and they should know there are consequences for your actions.
All right, this has been walked back to some degree, Casey, but this is a little concerning.
This is very concerning to me. I mean, the Wall Street Journal, you spoke of the pushback. It ranges from Tucker Carlson, Megyn Kelly, Matt Walsh, all the way to the Wall Street Journal, across the right, the spectrum on the right, condemned her comments. And actually, the Wall Street Journal editorial board said that before she goes on more podcasts to talk about Charlie Kirk, she should watch some podcasts of what Charlie Kirk actually said, because he would have condemned this very thing. Charlie was on the record saying that hate speech does not exist. It's not a legal category. It should never be prosecuted. And this is the resurrection of a corpse of something the right thought they killed when they defeated a lot of the last administration.
Look, I am not at all afraid of what other people have to say. No. And in fact, I think what gives rise to this quote-unquote hate speech, which is a nebulous term that's undefined, but what foments the violence, I think, and the hatred that is behind the speech, which, by the way, is in the heart. Yep. Jesus said it's out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. Right. But I think what gives rise to that is a lack of debate and conversation. We're not discussing with even our differences as a nation. We're not discussing them. What we're doing is we're going together in our different groups and railing against the other group. There's no interaction.
Well, part of it goes back to our previous point, though. We're not on common footing from which to have a conversation. I mean, you have the secular liberals who believe that you can be whatever gender you want, that they used to,
But those are not secular, those are not liberals. They're not,
not even liberals anymore.
Yeah, they're not liberals anymore. We could debate with the liberals.
Right.
Because the liberals had a different viewpoint, but they still agreed that there was a common, there was transcendent truth to a degree. There was there were certain things that were real and true. The left does not believe that. The left wants to silence anyone who opposes them, and they can't debate because...
Not unlike what's happening in Dearborn.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
And they cannot defend their positions because, as you said, there's no common ground to be found.
Right. Yeah, I think the theme that we're pulling out of this is that free speech actually working is an outgrowth of a society that's unified around a common faith and ideals. So we can have these guardrails and within which to debate.
So how do we get that back?
Revival.
I mean, it really is. This is the moment for the church. I believe that our nation stands at a place of decision because we cannot sustain this path that we're on of not even being able to have a conversation. I mean, when you cannot agree that a boy is a boy and a girl is a girl, there's probably very little you can agree with.
You're speaking from two different playbooks.
Right.
It's different worldviews.
And the only way to bring that back together is to, again, not everybody thinking the same, not everybody going to the same church. We're not even talking about that. What we're talking about is a recognition that, in fact, there is truth. There is truth. I mean, I know that we live in, postmodern America, some describe it, and truth has been determined by, relative morality for some time. But this is a logical course that it takes where you can't even science becomes redefinable.
Right, and that's where we have to look back to the things that's not redefinable in Scripture.
So how do we, I want to bring up one more topic before we kind of land this plane, and that is ABC's late night host, Jimmy Kimmel, was booted off the air. I never watched him, I'll have to say, so I'm not... Late night for me is 9 o'clock. Yeah, so I haven't watched late night since Johnny Carson. So I don't know if you know who that was.
I did. Yeah, he's in my history book.
Okay, yeah. So I don't partake of it, but I mean, unless they're advocating for violence, they have a right to be stupid. And I understand what he said. It was insensitive. It was not funny. It was stupid. But should we be now? I think the ABC has a right to do whatever they want to do, but I understand that it's possible that the FCC had their hand in this.
Yeah, you had FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. He said on a podcast, this is a very, very serious issue right now for Disney. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. And that's not quite a. You've got a nice network there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it, but it was certainly a threat. And you had.
Should the government be doing that?
Well, I mean, these are public airwaves for one, so the FCC does have an interest in it because it's airways paid for by or regulated by the FCC.
But do we have to agree with everything that's said?
And no, we don't. And there may be a few things at play here. Kimmel's show didn't even get as much viewership as Colbert's show. CBS canceled Colbert's show because it was losing money. So it might have been convenient for them to do that. But they are threatening them to. I mean, it was.
So what exactly did Kimmel say?
Kimmel said, he said the MAGA gang is desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
Oh, so he lied.
Yeah.
So either he is he has no idea what's going on, or he just flat out lied, because we know that's not the case.
Right. And he's said egregious things before. It's not.
When I was first a reporter, it was a very similar format as what we have here, and I would interview the left, and I would just let them talk. I didn't want to silence them. I wanted them to talk, because the more I let them talk, the more I exposed how unhinged they were. And I think you see this. I know they do it under the guise of humor. Right. They're not even funny. But it just shows how unhinged they are and how disconnected they are to the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that's said is true, and it's probably a little worrisome that the FCC is publicly maybe intimidating companies to do this. But if you've had the misfortune to regularly watch Kimmel's show, it is pretty much the anti-Trump show every day. It's not a wide-ranging show that goes on all kinds of diverse political topics. It is, every monologue is just making fun of Trump. And I think there is a question, without even agreeing with what was done here, of what obligation do public airwaves have to be even some semblance of just serving the public versus serving one side?
I mean, a valid question. I mean, I think there's a sense of decorum that we should have, especially when it comes to our leaders. But do we have that same for Joe Biden?
I think
we do as Christians. We have to. Yes. We need to respect our leaders.
Yeah, and the thing we need to watch out for, and the right needs to watch out for, the administration needs to watch out for, is setting precedent to where the next in another administration, future down the road, is a show like this going to be censored?
That is always my consideration in this is looking downrange.
Yeah.
How is this going to be? What precedent will this set? Rules, procedures, policies need to be universal in terms of how we treat everyone. Do we want to be treated that way? Now, I'm not going to be criticizing, people who were assassinated or presidents. I'm going to talk about their policies. But could that be interpreted as criticism?
Yeah. Or even Antifa being labeled a terrorist group. I mean, they have, there's some evidence for that. A lot of the BLM riots seem to have Antifa people there stoking violence. But when it turns out you can just bomb terrorist ships that are called Venezuela in the ocean, and then you're labeling people terrorist groups, it raises that same question about precedent for the future.
I mean, a lot to pray about. Jared, Casey, thanks so much for joining us. And folks, thank you for joining us as well. We share all this with you, not just to inform you on what's happening here in the nation's capital, but to inform how you pray. Look, I'm optimistic, because as Christians, we know that God can move on the hearts of people. He can transform their lives, and as He transforms lives, He transforms communities and countries. And we need to be praying and working to that end here in the United States and around the world. Until next time, keep standing.
Washington Watch with Tony Perkins is brought to you by Family Research Council and is entirely listener-supported. Portions of the show discussing candidates are brought to you by Family Research Council Action. For more information on anything you heard today, or to find out how you can partner with us in our ongoing efforts to promote faith, family, and freedom, visit TonyPerkins.com.